Hello, everyone. I wanted to wish you a very happy new year before I begin with our presentation of the week ahead. I wanted to do this yesterday. I actually tried 3 different times to create this video, and I had to kind of abandon ship. At a certain point, I realized I wasn't processing what was going on. And um, as many of you already know, I am very interested in international relations. I studied that to a master's level in both Toronto and Brussels, and it's a bit of an addiction of mine, and I've tried to shake it off for many, many years. But when big events happen, it's my almost reflex action to go and try and figure out what's going on. And then I look through the astrology as well to see where that's showing up in the astrology. And as I was doing that, I was realizing that I was getting quite stressed, and it was creating this old sense of urgency. And this is something I really want to move away from. And this is really what this week is about. So I wanted to share this with you in terms of the overall energy of the week of this Capricorn stellium. This is a classical stellium, 4 planets in one sign, and that's Mercury, Venus, the Sun, and Mars. Venus, Sun, and Mars being very, very close already as I'm preparing this. This is now the 4th of January. If you want to hear about the full moon that was yesterday on the 3rd, I did a video about that, and you can already take a look at that. And I want to describe a little bit about the energy of this moment and how that's affecting all of us in terms of how we need to decide to go forward in life in a very general way. So Capricorn is in the natural zodiac, the 10th house. It represents the outer world and our outer ambitions and the things that we want to accomplish in the world and how we want to engage. And the Latin word existere, which is what we say to exist. To exist. It's not just about like being a lump on the couch watching Netflix. It's not about just breathing. It's about how we engage. And existere, the Latin root of to exist, connects very strongly with the 10th house, with that Capricorn and Saturnian energy, which is to participate and take responsibility for how we show up out in the world, to reach out into activity and what we are, what we want to accomplish, what we want to do. And this is very much the energy of this cycle that's beginning, these cycles that are beginning just now in this week ahead. So I want to break that down a little bit. Before I do that, I want to introduce myself to those who are new here and welcome. I lost a lot of, almost 200 subscribers. I lost in December when I announced that I needed to take a break. So I guess those were fair weather friends. Maybe some of you are back. But I've gained some new subscribers in the meantime since I recently posted. And so very much welcome to those of you who are new, and welcome back to those of you who are watching from many, many years. And you will know that if you have been watching me for many, many years, I try and make my astrology as pragmatic as possible. So we're looking at things from a lens of, okay, what can I do with this energy? It's interesting in theory, but it doesn't really help us advance through life. And that's my aim, is to help us to move through life and find ourselves as we do that. I reposted with that in mind, something that somebody drew to my attention. One of your lovely viewers commented on a video I did 2 years ago with my dear friend Roshi, who is a mystic and a seer. And she and I were talking about the age, well, not the age, but the new era of Pluto in Aquarius. And I want to bring that into this moment in time because it's part of a phase that we're entering into really, really strongly now with the invasion now of Venezuela really starting to heighten tensions in a way that feels very, very urgent. And we're getting a lot of energy that is conflicting and challenging as we go through the next few weeks on a global level. On an individual level, we can always use this energy in very much more constructive ways if we're apprised of it and we have a sense of what we aim to do, which is that Capricorn energy. What are my ambitions? What are my goals? What are my intentions in this lifetime? Why am I here? And how do I show up when I leave my home? The 4th house is your cozy spot. It's where you settle in with your cup of tea, or where you cuddle the dog or the cat or whatever. That's the 4th house. It's how you are in your intimate self. And the 10th house is where you step out, like I was saying earlier about that sense of to exist in the way of reaching out in the Latin sense of existere. And so here we're looking at a whole new era where we really need to decide intimately, personally, how we want to step out through that 10th house energy in our way of showing up in the world, because this is a world that is dramatically different. I'll just make a couple of brief announcements. I will be finally starting this beginner's course that I've been teasing you with for months already, and I'm really grateful for those of you who keep insisting and writing to me about it, and I'm so happy to be able to announce that it's open for registration. I have the links below, and in the pinned comment, the very first comment of this video, you'll find all the details to register. I hope you can join me. I've tried to make it a reasonable price. It's 8 sessions of my time, so you're not getting pre-recorded sessions, you're getting me. And we get to talk about things as well as look at the astrology in what I consider to be the most important things to understand as you go forward in your journey through learning astrology. And then the second course that's available, both of which start in March around the equinox, is the intermediate course that I love to do, which is the getting to the heart of the chart, which is to really try and understand how to deepen your chart reading skills, to be able to sit with somebody and really understand who you're sitting across from and what is their bigger issue. They might present with 1 or 2 questions, but there's a bigger issue behind everything that is presented, and that stems from perinatal stories, and that's what we'll look at. We'll develop that in another 8-week session. And that one is for people who already have notions of astrology. So you can't join that without having a pretty solid grip on astrology. And you'll have the information linked below as well. Right, I think that's it for me. That's the messages part. And also, just so you know, in general, I am a consulting astrologer, but I just need to cut back on the consultations that I'm doing. I will not be able to offer weekend consultations through basically the middle of May because of the courses. So only for people in European or further east time zones will I be able to see you on a Saturday morning, for example, but not Saturday afternoon, which doesn't suit North and South America. But I'm afraid I just have to make decisions. That's the Capricorn aspect as well. It's the cold-hearted, calculation. What can I do? What can I not do? Where are my boundaries? This is very good Saturnian stuff that we've been learning with Saturn. The royal we has been learning with Saturn in Pisces, which is where I have a stellium. And so a lot of what I will be offering is restricted in the first few months of the year, partly also because I'm finishing the book that I've been working on, and I really just need to get this damn thing out into the world and out of my head. And I am really looking forward to sharing that with you. Because it also helps people understand how I look at the natal chart as well. And you don't need to be an astrologer to read that book, but it's especially geared to people who are a little bit aware of astrology. I think that's it, right? So let's get back into this whole story. Before we go into the Capricorn stellium, I want to look in a global sense at what's going on, because we're in a new era, you may have noticed, unless you've been just sort of sleeping for the last decade or so. This new era I've described at length in many, many videos, but also if you are, here's another plug for you, if you are, and if you still yet haven't bought the annual readings that I prepare for each sign, you will get a lot of detail around that, and especially all of the major aspects that are happening through the year, the major changes that you can expect. Do take advantage of the sale. The price is very low right now, and you can take advantage of that and buy these readings, and they're also linked below. And there are 2.5 hours roughly. Sagittarius got a bit of a bonus, 3 hours. But they are really worth your time because it really will set out the year. And so what I'm describing here, those of you who already have seen your sign-based video will understand what's going on in January. It's quite the month. I'm only going to reduce it to this week because it's a lot to break down. And I want to focus in on what this new cycle, which is very personal, represents in the month of January. And when I say personal, I don't mean about me. I mean, it's personal to you because all of what we call the personal planets, Mars is a personal planet, Venus, Mercury, these are personal planets along with the sun, all of which are in opposition to Jupiter. And I'll get to that in a moment. They're ruled by Saturn, which is ruled by this Jupiter opposing them all. It's a big deal. And this means that it's an opportunity for us to change our understanding of who we are, but we need to think of the context that we're doing that in. I want to go back to the 90s. The last time that we had this triple conjunction in Capricorn was in 1994. So that was January 1994. Maybe you were, and in fact, it's almost to the year, to the day rather. It was the 7th of January 1994, around 14 degrees of Capricorn. So here we are back again. 16, 17, 18, 19 degrees of Capricorn is where this builds up its intensity. But these are the exact conjunctions. You want to think about this of a few degrees on either side because these conjunctions build at once they're close enough to each other within 3 degrees of each other. So this is the energy that we're already in. But we were there in the 90s. And why that's interesting to me is because from 1994, we moved into the next era. Pluto was still in Scorpio in those days. We moved into the next era when Pluto moved into Sagittarius. Now, Pluto is a generational time marker, but it also tells us a lot about the zeitgeist of the moment. So it's not just individual changes and the generational changes, but what is going on in the world around us. These are transpersonal planets. When we look at Pluto or Neptune or Uranus, they're transpersonal. That means that they affect all of us, and in a way that is often a little bit diffused, in a way that we sometimes don't realize until we look back in time. The more we get used to working with these outer planets, the more we see these patterns are absolutely clear. And with Pluto, it's very much about power, about control, about transformation through crisis, about things being imposed or change, and crisis imposing change. It's about power plays, big money is Pluto as well in different ways. We'll see that shadowing through the different signs. So when Pluto moved in 1995, it moved into Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is all about law. It's all about the notion of what is righteous, what is right and wrong, in that big sense of morality. And when Pluto goes in there, it completely turns things upside down, especially in the early days. It turns things around. And that was the time that Pluto going through Sagittarius between 1995 and 2008, when it moved into Capricorn, that was the end of what we could describe as international law. We're in an era now, you may have seen it this weekend, of a total absence of international law. People who are trying to maintain that system, which is, by the way, most of the rest of the world, but the people who are still trying to cling to that system do so in vain, because we have seen in an accelerated way since Pluto moved into Sagittarius that maybe I just need to stop sharing for a minute because this doesn't make any sense on the screen. So here I am. Hello. I hate looking at myself in the screen, but there we are. So Pluto in Sagittarius stopped our, let's say, progress through international law. And that was in the late 90s, when 1997, 98, 98 especially, when NATO, led by the US, the Clinton administration, bombed the Yugoslavia. They even damaged the Chinese embassy in doing so totally illegally. It was the first time that NATO, which is supposed to be a defensive organization, but with an Aries stellium clearly is not, it was the first time that NATO actually was proactively and, let's say, illegally as well, aggressing another country, a non-member country. You have to look into the history of that on your own, because it's not something I don't want to get into with this session. It's really more about the cycles of Pluto. I just want you to get the big picture of where we are right now, so you can understand how you're trying to work your way through this in your own choices. Now, the next era, Pluto in Capricorn, began in January of 2008. So that was the end of the Bush administration. And it was the beginning of the Obama administration. And that was when we had this financial crisis. There's a lot of resonance with that particular period. Money took over. That was the time where, for example, there was in the very middle of the 90s, the mid 90s to the late 90s, there was this use in an academic sense of what is now used very widely, the rules-based international order. That was the attempt at describing this dissolution of international law. They're not the same thing. Rules-based international order was a reference to American domination. So those were terms of and here I just have to say this again. I'm not talking about American people. I'm talking about the American government, right? American means it's a short form for the US government. It's not, Fred and Alice sitting there doing things that are wrong. It's about what your government and the shadow government, or what's called the deep state, the CIA and the three-letter agencies do on behalf of the US. So when I'm saying that, please keep that in mind. So this notion of the rules-based international order was really about dominating by money. And that was when the WTO, or World Trade Organization, was dominating discussions around how things fit together and who fits in. Now, interestingly, when Pluto moved into Capricorn at this time, it was very clear to the Russians and of course the Chinese that the West was blocking them and did not want to give them full access to work in tandem with this the G7 in those days, G8 and G20. It was a bit of a horse and pony show, and it was just this whole thing of again speaking about things that are not actually what is happening behind the scenes. This is what we've become very used to nowadays, but it's still because of the media domination, highlighting only what they wanted to highlight. We weren't as au fait with all of these different shenanigans going on behind the scenes. So now we are, and what we saw was the beginning of BRICS. So the BRICS countries, and again, I'll let you look all of those as BRICS. The initial BRICS slogan was also an academic term. So the rules-based international order was an academic term, then BRICS was an academic term. And in fact, they both became adopted widely because it's easy to summarize a goal. Now, rules-based international order can be associated very strongly with neocons, neoconservatives, who basically want to dominate the world. These are the hegemonic forces of the US state, or officially or unofficially, who want to control everything. And we see this weekend. We saw it with Venezuela. This is Pirates of the Caribbean starting. Now you just forget the rules and we just take what we want and we go after it. And we say what we like about what we are, just how we're justifying that. But this is now where we are very, very openly. Previously, they tried to doll it up with more pretty slogans, but now they're not even worried about that. Anyway, so the BRICS started at this same time that we lost international law. And BRICS started because it was very clear to those countries who initially started the BRICS that they were being shoved out of the game. And this game, what is the game? Pluto in Capricorn, it's financialization. It's about money. It's about the breakdown of institutions, the institutions that used to uphold government or uphold international law. The total breakdown of institutions that were agreed after the Second World War. And if you've seen my videos on Pluto moving into Aquarius back in even 2023 and 2024, I was talking about how that opposition is going to oppose all of the Pluto in Leo institutions that were opposed World War II institutions like the UN and NATO and so on. That's where we're going to see them all slowly crumble apart. And we are seeing that. The same thing with the European institutions. So the Pluto in Capricorn energy is about this story of financialization, corporatization. These super PACs came in 2010 in the United States. Those are, for people who are not aware of American politics, it's where corporations were identified as a person, and it gives them increased capacity to litigate. Corporations became supranational, meaning that they were no longer under the influence of national law. They are a law unto themselves. And this is why we see so much illegality based on what we've traditionally considered to be how the world is organized through international law. We just see an absolute riot of illegality, and that is because of the corporate growth in power that we saw through Pluto in Capricorn. Now, you've all seen what's been going on around the world from 2008 until 2023. March 2023 is when Pluto moved into Aquarius the first time. 23rd of March 2023, Pluto moved in there the first time. It moved out again, I think it was in June, then it moved back in the following, in the beginning of 2024, was it April? March, April again, I can't remember. Maybe it was January. I can't remember. Sorry, the dates are a little hazy. You can find them online. And then it moved back again into Capricorn one last time. This, by the way, is also the US Pluto return. This is a very significant thing for a nation which starts to break down and degenerate. When it has its Pluto return, doesn't mean disappear, by the way. This means change. Pluto means transformation through crisis, through things going in a very, very different direction to what we had become familiar with. Then we see Pluto basically, essentially from November, I think it was the 19th of November 2024, Pluto establishes itself in Aquarius. And so since early 2023 and until now, we have seen huge progress in techno control. We had the technology before. Now what we're finding is Pluto dominance, control, power structures, people who are powerful, people who are incredibly wealthy. That's the plutocrats dominating the technical space that we've all become incredibly reliant on. We're speaking through this technology that I am 100% reliant on now to do the work that I'm doing and to communicate the message that I want to share with you. So Pluto in Aquarius, as if you've been following me, you will know I am not one of these people who has this really lovely ideal around what it means for everybody, the kumbaya and the hippies coming together in their communes and so on. If you've ever been to a hippie commune, you will know that that's not a fun place to be. That it breaks down society, it breaks down social structures. Pluto in Aquarius is about trying to find one's way forward in a new society and often comes with some serious challenges. Now, the extra challenge, extra layer of challenge on this is that we have this extraordinary mini grand trine at the same time. This mini grand trine is air and fire. And on top of that, we have this fire horse year. I'm a fire horse. So from 66, so if you're born somewhere in early February 66 until late January, early February 67, you are also a fire horse. Every 60 years in the Chinese calendar, this energy is intense. It's not just, it's not the horse year, it's the fire horse year. And this intensity brings about a rapid acceleration of change. This is just adding the details to what we already see in our Western astrology. A need to act quickly. That's what I'm going to describe when I come back to the inner planets, the personal planets that we're looking at in terms of the week ahead. Why am I telling you all of this? It's because we're in a situation where what is moving ahead is not necessarily working in our favor. In many cases, it's going to be very rough, and it's necessary for us to be really clear who we are, how we want to go forward with life, who we are in community, how we want to lead in community, what are our ambitions, our personal goals, our personal beliefs and ambitions. and how that is going to be taking us out into this Capricornian 10th house. I'm not saying this to depress anyone. I'm trying to get you to recognize that it's not helpful to hold this notion of everything's going to be all right. And on one level, of course it is. We're going to die and everything will be fine after that because we're going to leave this mortal coil and move away from the struggles which are inherent in human existence and move into other levels of energetic existence, which we're living also simultaneously as we are here. But we don't want to wait until then. We want to live here now, and we want to be aware of how we're living here now and the choices that we make and how we conduct ourselves as individuals. This is really important because it's all very well to say, I'm going to resist that, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to rebel against that. But most people that are alive today have absolutely no idea what it feels like to genuinely be in conflict. With all the horrible things that have been going on in the world, let's say over the last decade, or certainly Pluto in Capricorn, the last 16 years or so, more now, 20 years, well, no, 18 years. Most people didn't bother to leave their homes and get out and defend anything. They talked about it, especially online. Social media made us all feel like we were taking action when actually what we were doing was typing words into our computer or our phone. And that's a very different thing. When push comes to shove, we need to know, who are we? How do we take action? What are we going to do about this thing? It requires some kind of three-dimensional choices, not just talking about it. And that's why I'm encouraging you with this week to really get clear. What is the cycle I need to leave behind? What is it I need to do? So as I mentioned, the last time that we had this conjunction, the triple conjunction in Capricorn, was January 1994. We also had, I just want to get my dates correct here. We also had a really interesting conjunction that happened the last time. Let's say it was as close as it is now, because it's really close. Like they happen, but not usually within more than a degree. This is really within less than a degree, much less than a degree. These are really tight conjunctions. I think it's 22 arc minutes of a degree, which is incredibly close. And the last time it was so close was 1987, and that was August the 24th. It was a Virgo new moon. If you're born in 1987, especially if you're born around the 24th of August, that's a 1 degree, 0 degrees new moon and 1 degree conjunction, as Venus and Mars were conjoining and the sun and then the moon conjoined all together as well. So some of you, if you're old enough, will remember this story of harmonic convergence, and that happened the week before, the 16th and 17th of August. And that was going to be where everything changed. Everything was going to change. You still hear this from some astrologers online. This is it. This is our moment. Everything's changing. We're all waking up now. The whole world is changing. We're all going to come together, and this will bring peace and harmony. Now, we're talking about 1987. This was supposed to be the bridge to something very different. And again, I want to emphasize that on an individual level, we can go there, we can live there, we can be in that difference. That's where we want to stay, in fact, and I'm encouraging everyone to do that. But don't expect it to happen in the world around us. We have to manage ourselves in a world that is not waking up, in a world that is not harmonious, that is not peaceful. This is the way it is. This is the Kali Yuga. This is the time where things break down, and we have to find out who we are and how we can be resilient in the face of this breakdown. Right. All right. So the rant is over. I'm going to come back now to, if I haven't scared you off already, coming back now to our Capricorn story of the moment, because this is the moment. And the reason that that all was very important for me to put in context is because we see from this weekend and the invasion, the US invasion, totally illegally, totally unprovoked, of Venezuela. By the way, there's a really interesting Middle East Eye. Middle East Eye, MEE, you'll see it as, has social media channels all over the place, pardon me. You'll find them on YouTube. Sorry. Sorry about that, folks. I still am working through this flu that has been 3 weeks now, and it's a doozy. So might have to pause again later on. So sorry for that. Um, I was talking about the Middle East Eye, which is a media channel. You'll find it all over media, social media. They are mostly British journalists, independent journalists, fantastic journalism. And you will find an interview that they posted from 2009. Remember, just in the early days of Pluto in Capricorn with Hugo Chavez, who was the president of Venezuela at the time. And he's talking about how the US is trying to dominate and take over Venezuela. All right, so he gives a list of all of the governments and individuals that the US has either murdered or overthrown in just in South America. It extends around the world. Pardon me. I will pin that below too, because I think it's important to watch to show you that this is not a random act of the Trump administration. It is part of what I was describing about the breakdown in international law from Pluto in Sagittarius through Pluto in Capricorn and now Pluto in Aquarius, which has been the long-range plan of many people who are the ones behind the people that we see on the news as the leaders, who are all venal and corrupt and self-dealing. So they're very easy to turn without exception. There's no exception to that. Um, and um, and that is something that is quite eye-opening. So for those of you who don't follow these things, who think this is a sudden and unusual occurrence, you will see that it's been in the works already, and they have been nudging in this direction for decades already. Same thing applies to China. And I will not get too deep into that because that's a whole other kettle of fish. That is just such a long, long, long game of waging war on China. And yeah, I invite you to do your own research on that. Stay away from mainstream media when you do that. And on my channel, I have posts. I have YouTube posts, which are all listing independent media sources that I look at that you can rely on, that I vet them by qualification, by the way that they speak about things. They come from different countries. They are, you need to hear different opinions. You need to listen to your enemies. You need to understand the people you consider to be your enemy, because you will realize that you are not being told the truth. And this is, I think, the most valuable thing about Pluto in Aquarius, which for me, as I've described, if you've been with me for a while, you will know that I feel the Pluto-Neptune sextile, which has persisted over 80 years or so, no coincidence since about the Second World War, has been really closely tied with propaganda, mind control, and influence. So we're moving beyond that phase of influence, and we're moving into a phase of totalitarian control. And again, this is where I want to come back to this Capricorn Cazimi story, the Capricorn stellium, because we're now having to decide who we are in these deeply Orwellian times. And again, this is not to scare you, it's to become practical in this Capricorn way. Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, is not emotional. If you bring emotions into this, you don't think rationally. Once you get into your emotional self, your prefrontal cortex ceases to function, and you're no longer able to plan and create and look at things, because the emotions are clouding judgment. And that's why you're being fed things that keep you emotional. Even if you look at clickbait YouTube titles, even if people who are actually ostensibly trying to do an interesting job, it could be an astrologer or anybody else, the clickbait is off the charts. Notice it always is to trigger an emotion, a fear, an excitement, a passion. this is dangerous because it takes away control that you have of your own capacity to judge and think for yourself. Coming back to Capricorn, when I say Capricorn does not have emotion, I'm talking about the archetype of Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn. I'm not talking about you as a Capricorn because you have other aspects of you which will feed into your emotionality. The archetype of Capricorn is cold and dry. The Saturn influence is very serious. Let's get to business, be pragmatic, make things function. Let's make this real. Let's do this the right way. It doesn't care about your feelings. This is 10th house stuff. This is the business house. These are corporations. These are bankers. These are the people who don't care about your feelings around what happens. They just want what they want and they go and get it. This is why the 10th house is about your ambitions and it's about how you get there. And we can see in a person's chart how ruthless are you in terms of your ambitions? How much are you willing to sell your soul for your ambitions? Uh, we do have an opportunity here to bring a bit of that planning and strategizing and ruthlessness of the Mars in Capricorn, which is exalted in Capricorn because it's serving Saturn, which is ruthless. So that's why Mars in Capricorn does so well. It's just going to do the job. It's the soldier who follows orders. It's the person who will never give up. They will climb that mountain. They will never stop. It's the person who will finalize that deal, even if it costs them 2 nights of sleep. This is the energy of the Capricorn side that you want to start to understand is what we need to consciously work with. Don't shy away from it and say, I'm a spiritual person. I'm not like that. We have to find a way of being in ourselves where we're clear-minded and say, I see what my goals are. They might be spiritual goals, but I see that I need to shed this aspect of myself, or I need to let go of this, or I need to move away from that. That might be, and you'll see it when we go sign by sign, it might be around a relationship. There may be relationships ending at this time, or relationships that are being more strongly cultivated at this time because it's what the moment requires. And that's especially true because of the opposition with Jupiter. And Jupiter is ruling the Saturn that's ruling this Capricorn stellium. So we see this opportunity to really look at, with the Venus Cazimi, how do I relate to people? How do I relate to my passions and desires, my preferences, my desire for harmony, my desire for beauty? How will I be taking action towards my finances or my relationships, my friendships, especially with women, but not exclusively, my most cherished connections. Now, Venus is Cazimi, exact as you see on the chart, on the 6th of January at 1636. I'm using universal time so that you all understand. I use universal time, which represents London time. And that universal time is because you're all over the world. So basically for everybody, Venus is Cazimi on the 6th. That will change for the Venus-Mars conjunction the next day and the day after because that's a little bit overnight. And so at 16 degrees, 22 minutes of Capricorn, which you can see here on the chart, Venus is meeting up with the Sun. But notice that they are less than a degree away from Mars, even still. So this all through this beginning part of January, which you know if you've already had my annual forecasts, this is part of the theme of this beginning of the month, including with the full moon that we've just had in Cancer. And so this, I'll just give you the data around this. This is a superior conjunction. And what that means, or sometimes people call that an exterior conjunction, it means that Venus is on the other side of the sun from us. And anytime Venus is conjoining the sun, we can't see her. She's too close. So that Cazimi is traditionally considered to be within 17 arc minutes of a degree. We can consider that within a degree, Venus is very, very much in the heart of the sun, but the 17 arc minutes of a degree is the tradition. And that is a signature of restarting something. We're leaving behind the old cycle. So the last cycle where she connected with the sun was 22nd of March last year. in 2025, and that was at 2 degrees of Aries, which is a degree point which keeps getting triggered again by the Neptune-Saturn ingress to Aries, and that will come through once again on the 26th of January when Neptune goes in that part, and then on the 15th of February, the 13th to the 14th of February when Saturn moves into those degrees as well. Finally, I think actually reaching those degrees only in March. So that will be something to notice because that ties in with when Venus becomes visible again in the second half of February. So Venus actually becomes visible after we have our eclipse in Aquarius, and I will come back, of course, to describe what that all represents for us. Interestingly, the eclipse point is at the 28th, almost 29 degrees of Aquarius, and as we're doing the Cazimi chart, we're looking at the moon in its opposition here to that point at 29, almost the end of Leo. That is Regulus, which is a really interesting point in and of itself. Royal star, very significant star point if you have that in your natal chart. Why am I telling you about this? Oh, yes. So the Venus is invisible for basically 6 weeks or 5 weeks, let's say. And that matters because what you start now or what you plan on now is not necessarily going to bear fruit until it's really separated from the sun. So she's tracking the sun too closely to be visible. And then when she's reborn in the evening star phase. So that's her new synodic cycle of the evening star, which for example, in what did I say? It was March 22nd of 2025. That was her morning star phase. So she became reborn in the morning, and now she is in the evening. She is the evening star. So it's intriguing because when you think about the plans that you're setting and the way that you want to reach out into yourself, into your future, the way you want to step out your front door in that Capricornian 10th house way, you are planning now. And you can see that transpire. So don't think you have to figure this out this week. Don't feel like, okay, I've got to know what I want to do by the 9th of January. Have a sense of this is a progression that is coming through a deeper understanding of your role in the world, how you're reaching into the world. These are cardinal energies. Jupiter is in cardinal Cancer. Capricorn is cardinal as well. And these cardinal energies are the energies that start the seasons. This is where in the tropical zodiac we get the degrees lining up with the movement of the sun, the tropos of the sun over the equator and over the ecliptic points that it's tracking. The Tropic of Capricorn, in this case with Capricorn, Tropic of Cancer, in the case of Cancer, that's the summer in the Northern Hemisphere. Capricorn is the winter in the Northern Hemisphere. And that is something that is showing us there's something very new here. Venus was in Aries at her last conjunction, that was in March. That's also part of that newness that we're experiencing very strongly since 2025. But you can factor this in as well. I have to take action. Cardinal energy is about taking action. It's about not accepting what is and moving towards something that is important. That's the Capricornian understanding. Important, living in integrity. That's also Capricorn. We're working with something that feels helpful. Capricorn and Cancer is the axis of service within family or sustaining things that are reliable. In the Capricornian way is just doing the right thing, doing the thing that is necessary. This is something that can be ascribed to being of service in community, for example, taking care of weaker members of society. That's very Capricorn. Capricorn can often feel guilty and responsible for other people's things, other people's situations, and that's something to notice as well. This would be a great way of understanding that cycle. Do I feel responsible for other people? And we have to realize in the circumstances that we're in, our best way of helping other people is to take care of ourselves, to do things that we need to do for ourselves. Now, if we take the Mars and the Sun, sorry, Mars and then Venus, that's the next one. Mars is conjoining Venus, And that is the very next day. Well, in the United States, well, North America, South America, it's going to be on the 7th, but actually universal time, it's on the 8th. And that's at the 18th degree. So we saw at 1622 of Capricorn, Venus met the Sun. That's her new synodic cycle. Now, Venus and Mars have a cycle. So with Venus and the Sun, it's roughly every 9 months. So notice that that is like a gestation phase as well, that Venus representing gestation as well, of things, of ideas, of concepts. And you can look at this in this next 9 months, because Venus will conjoin the Sun at 0 degrees of Scorpio. And that is going to be, did I write that date down? Well, that conjunction is part of her retrograde cycle. And that's between October and November next year. Again, if you are, I can give you those dates here somewhere. October 3rd until November 13th, that she is retrograde. And that also corresponds with the day that she meets the Sun. And you will have already heard this if you have the annuals. The day she meets the Sun in that 0 degree Scorpio, Cazimi, that's the day that Mercury begins its retrograde in Scorpio. So again, there's some interesting things that are lining up with new cycles. So for the next 9 months, this is the Venus-Sun cycle that you can focus on. And in terms of Venus and Mars, they meet about every year. It's much more common, the Venus-Sun, Venus-Mars. And then we'll see that Venus and this, Mars and the Sun is only every 2 years. So we're building up to anything between 9 months and 2 years from now. But take them all together because it's very difficult to parse out what is what. And so part of the dynamic of Venus and Mars is where we find either conflicting desires, because they're two opposite energies, Venus and Mars, and having to reconcile that, or the passion that comes from having these opposites, these conflicting desires. So notice, obviously, it's the masculine and feminine, the Venus-Mars dynamic. And that is creating tension. That's what creates sexual tension. It's what creates tension between what is harmonious, Venus, and what is necessary and possibly violent, Mars. And again, we're looking through the lens of Saturn, Capricorn, which is just do the thing that needs to be done. So there's going to be tension this week also around some aspect of what you feel is necessary, how you want to go about it, how you need to move forward in your way, and whether that is in alignment with what feels comfortable for you. What that might do is it can impede either your capacity to sustain harmony, or you might find that you have to back down a little bit and just swallow. Venus in Capricorn doesn't like to kick up a fuss. Doesn't like to make a scene. So she often will accept things, and this is Venus in earth signs in general, will tolerate things to just allow things to happen. And this is where Mars is dominant. So Venus is meeting Mars. Mars is the dominant one here. Mars is receiving Venus. Pardon me. And with this reception, Mars receiving Venus into this conjunction, Mars has the dominant role. He's exalted. Venus is not particularly comfortable in Capricorn. She does pretty well with Saturn. She's a friend of Saturn, so she's good, minding her P's and Q's, knowing which fork to use. Don't cause a fuss. But is that necessarily the right thing? That's something you individually, you will have to figure out for yourselves. So there will be a need to take action and perhaps a compromise around your initial desires, or a need to do something that feels a little bit overbearing or necessarily uncomfortable, because you have to kind of flex your muscles and reach out into something and understand how you are needing to take this action, because there's a duty and an obligation behind this situation. At the time of the Mars-Venus conjunction, we have a trine from the earthbound moon here in Virgo. And that's significant too, because there's something harmonious in terms of where we feel this is what we have to do. A moon in Virgo is doing the thing that is necessary. It's doing the day-to-day sort of, schlepping, and the thing that is not necessarily flashy, but necessary to keep things going. to be of service. As I mentioned earlier, the notion of Capricorn is where you find people engaging, for example, in politics with a worthy sense of self. I'm doing this for the right thing, and then they get corrupted, and that all falls apart. But it's this notion of civil service or doing something that is for the greater good. Again, that doesn't always play out. Civil services are often not civil and not service, but anyway, that's another story. So Mars and Saturn are both playing really, really strong roles here. Those are the two malefics. They are malefic, meaning, again, don't care about your opinion. Don't care about how you feel about this. This, I don't mind, whatever it is. What's interesting here is that we've got the moon, which is all about our feelings. Venus is more about the preferences. The moon is about feelings and how the mind is operating. And the moon is ruled by this Mercury, which is, again, ruled by Saturn. So it's a super pragmatic situation that we're in. Be really clear and practical about what you decide. If this is off the table and this is back on the table, or this is where I need to walk away. This is what I'm completely done here. I need to engage in this way with this person in these manners. And again, we'll go sign by sign to see which house this is going to affect you in, sign by sign. And I just want you to get the sense of how practical this moment in time is and can really support you, because we need to open our eyes to the world that is around us, the world that we are inhabiting. We can decide that, I can't hear you, it's not what I want to see, it's not what I want to believe, and focus only on the nice things. And I do recommend that. I do recommend to a limited extent that you focus on feeling happy, feeling good, developing higher energy, and so on. But we also have to navigate a world where we are now 100% controlled by the technology in our pockets and in our homes. And if we think we're going to go off to Bali and have that wonderful retreat, well, maybe you will no longer be able to travel, or maybe for example, the satellites are going to collide into each other and we lose the internet. These are all potentials. These are all things that are very much part of what is the potentiality. And I'm not saying that in any way, again, to scare people. It's about what would happen to you in your life if all of a sudden you went right back to 1983. And I don't want to say 1984 because I feel like we're living in 1984, but 1983, where you have nothing. There's no computer, or a few people have computers, but there's no internet. Nobody's talking through their computers to other people. If you want to get a taxi, you got to use a landline phone, your cab. If you want to go on a flight somewhere, you need to go to a travel agent and book your flight, or go to the airport and book your flight. And you'll be lucky because you won't get any flights if the computers are down, if the system is down. So I'm just saying, who are you without all of this stuff that we've taken for granted? This would be the moment to discover that. Mercury is being very pragmatic as well. The Mercury-Sun conjunction, by the way, only happens once the Sun moves into Aquarius, and that's, of course, going to be very deeply impactful because that will involve Pluto too, within a couple of degrees. That's another video. This one is already getting way too long. So we then have, as we move into our week, we then at 19 degrees, nearly 20 degrees, we have now the Mars Cazimi. It's also a superior conjunction. So at this particular time, we have Mercury really, really fast. Venus is really fast. Mars is really fast because they're not in their retrograde phases. They're going really quickly. Things will happen fast. And this is, again, part of the cardinal energy. It's part of the energy of the vibe of the year. Things are accelerating. Things will happen very, very quickly. It doesn't mean that you have to necessarily decide something and stick with it, and that will be it. You're done then for the rest of the year. You can still work with what needs to be decided, what cycles you want to start. So when Mars is meeting in its superior conjunction again to the Sun, notice again, super close to Venus. It's 39 arc minutes of a degree. really, really tight all the way through the week. Mars, when it meets the sun every 2 years, the next time will be um, the next time is on the 19th. Sorry, that's the Mars will oppose the sun on the 19th of February, 2027. So about a year from now. And then the next time that they meet is somewhere here. Sorry, I've got so many notes here. Speaking of going too fast. Um, Mars meets up with the sun. I think it's March of 2028. Now, I can't remember. It's February or March 2028. I'll see if I can get that date before we end this, and I will put it in the in the comments below the video. Anyway, point being, Mars is moving fast. It's moving extremely quickly, and Mars will be moving. It'll be retrograding in January. So a year from now, it will retrograde 10th of January. So when it meets the opposition or goes into opposition with the sun, it will be retrograding through the opposition of the sun at 10 degrees of Virgo. So you can, for those of you who are looking at the nodes, you can see that the nodes are at that degree point. The nodal axis is currently North Node Rahu in 10 degrees of Pisces, and the South Node Ketu is in 10 degrees of Virgo. That will be the degree point that Mars will be retrograding on the 10th of January, almost exactly a year from now, in Virgo, 10 degrees of Virgo. And then it goes back into Leo, I think 20 degrees of Leo, where it stations direct on the 1st of April, the following spring, almost 21 degrees of Leo. And we're talking about 2027 here, right? Okay, so it's going to continue, and that's conjunct again the South Node, which will then move into Leo at that point. It'll be conjoining K2, and Jupiter will be retrograde at that point, at that degree, or close to within 2-3 degrees of that. So this event, what we're looking at here, Mars conjoining the Sun, we are going to feel resonating for a long time to come. This is not always the case. We're really in this unusual period of time where we can think of the next year ahead as going to be helping us decide with the South Node impact, and then the retrograde cycle starting a year from now, what it is that we need to do differently, what we need to let go of. And I want to emphasize that the notion of letting go is not stuff, it's not always people and stuff. It can be very helpful to simplify. I would say it's extremely helpful to simplify and go back to what are essentials, what are basics. You don't have to be a prepper, but go back to things that are usable, practical skills. What can I develop? What happens if the internet shuts down tomorrow? If we have no electricity? If everything goes off grid for even hours or days, or for a long time? What happens if there's a major event and that means that I'm somehow no longer able to function as I think as I dream, I'm always going to be able to function. And who am I in that moment? Who am I being? And this is again why I want to emphasize these are personal planets. And it's incumbent on us to understand who we are and how do we take responsibility for ourselves. What is the level of integrity that we are working with when we are planning ahead, planning for this this dynamic. Right, so just check my notes to see if I can find that Mars date for you. I'm sure I had written that down somewhere. Sorry about that. It's worth mentioning also that Venus is no longer out of bounds since the 3rd. Mars ends its out of bounds today as I'm producing this video for you on the 4th of January, and Mercury is leaving its out of bounds range, which means that it's more than 23 degrees of latitude away from the sun. And that is where things are a little out of control. And it's very interesting that this weekend, as Venezuela was being attacked by the US, as the president was being kidnapped with his wife, this entirely illegal operation, justified on totally fictitious merits, was done as Venus and Mars and Mercury were all out of bounds. And so this is cooling down a little bit as we go into the middle of January. but still definitely something to keep in mind in the broader sense. Now, again, as I mentioned before, we have much more personal control over how things feel in our own lives. And that's why I want to emphasize the personal agency that Saturn requires of us, that Capricorn requests of us, and the action that we need to take here. So think about that. Don't keep waiting for your savior. Don't buy into all these fantasies of how things are just going to be somehow miraculously wonderful. You can operate on different levels, and this is where the recent posting, I did it just before making this video. You'll find it on my YouTube posts. It's a 2-year-old video conversation I did with Roshim about living in these different dimensions and how we can understand ourselves through those different dimensions. But we still have to get up and use the toilet in the morning, so there's still something very human about us, however much we want to check out of the dynamic that we're in. Saturn is in Pisces. And with Neptune, I think one of the significators of this moment is that it's a get real moment. This is where the illusion and delusions that we have allowed things to kind of slide. We've been distracted by certain things and allowed other things to happen behind the scenes in ways that are detrimental to our well-being. This is the opportunity we have to really course correct on an individual level and try to understand how we individually can help each other. And that's what we really need to do. This is the message of Saturn, the message of Capricorn, message certainly of Venus, Mars, and the Sun. Did I tell you about Mars's degree? So the degree point is 19 and 9 minutes of Capricorn. Mars itself, where Venus is going into her evening phase, Mars is going into its morning phase. That means that when Mars starts to rise, which will only be in early March, and as I mentioned again, if you have already had the annuals, you will know that the Venus visibility and the Mars visibility ties in with the 2 eclipses that are coming, 17th of February and the 3rd of March. So between the 1st and 2nd week of March, Mars is easily visible, but in the morning sky. You have to get up early and look at it on the horizon as you get up in the morning. And that is the end, I think, of what I wanted to say generally. So one thing I didn't touch on yet is the opposition from Jupiter to all of this. And it's the opposition as the week goes on, the opposition gets tighter and tighter. And then later the following week, we start to build an opposition between Mercury and Jupiter. And that's for another video too. But because Mercury is lagging a little bit, Mars and Venus are going so fast, and the Sun goes 1 degree a day. They're moving really, really quickly. In the next less than 2 weeks, they will be in Aquarius. Mercury will still be in Capricorn. But with the opposition of Jupiter to all of this, things can get a little out of control if we don't start to be more pragmatic about things. Because Jupiter can expand. In the case of Capricorn, sentimentality, emotionality, in the case of Cancer, Jupiter in Cancer, and opposite everything in Capricorn, can expand emotionality, sentimentality, our attachments to our home, our people, homeland, our family, our sense of what is emotionally holding us together. And this is why I was saying it's really helpful to be clear-minded at this time. Don't let yourself get carried away emotionally. This is why I wasn't able to do these videos, this video yesterday. I started to realize I was getting this level of stress. And, anyway, doing mundane astrology requires, there's so many moving pieces. We can't just look at Venezuela because it's in a tableau of, I started listing the things that are interconnected. I got to 18 and I said, I can't do this. It's too much. And it takes me away from my peace of mind. And it takes me away from the capacity that I have to be there for other people because I'm getting pulled out into the world around me. And with Jupiter retrograde in Cancer, it's a good opportunity to pull in and to recognize, no, I might be adding too much to this, or I'm getting myself too engaged in these things. and I want to pull back. I really need to calm myself, take care of myself. The Jupiter in Cancer is certainly about self-care, about looking after the things that matter, the people that matter, the things that we can care for, because we can't take it all. We can't deal with it all. We can't work with everything. You know, this is very interesting around the South Node being in Virgo all this time, where Virgo wants to be there and wants to even to the point of possibly interfering. I want to, fix this. I want to improve it. I want to make this better. I want you to be like this. I don't want you to be like that. And that's the shadow energy of Virgo, and we need to let that go. This is the South Node. So where we can then say, okay, now I realize I need to let go of a sense of certain things being wrong in the bigger picture. There are certainly absolutes, but we're looking at Saturn and Neptune coming to the very last degree of the zodiac, where we have to see a huge picture. What is this world constructed in? You know, previous civilizations have risen and collapsed, and we're still working through cycles of civilizations rising and falling, rising and falling. If we get too attached to one particular way that things need to show up, we become very fragile. And I've said this many times before. This is a particular week in which we have to buckle up, basically, and buck up. We have to, it's that keep calm and carry on idea. This is very stiff upper lip stuff. It's about recognizing, okay, these are the facts. This is what's going on. I'm going to do what I can in my space according to what is possible for me, with my resources, with my energetic resources, with my personal capacity, and with what I know to be good and true. And that's the exalted Jupiter, even if it's retrograde. In Cancer, it's looking at what is good and true. So true with a capital T in the sense of humanity. So we're in choppy waters. We want to decide who we are when we're going through these choppy waters. It's a good time to look at autobiographies or biographies of people who have gone through hell and back, who have gone through really challenging social upheaval, social change, and stuck to their guns. Somebody like a Voltaire who was jailed multiple times. He had favor in the court. In the Louis XV, he was, favored. Then he was chucked into prison, for speaking his mind, for sticking to his guns, for holding his principles. And that's something, we don't have a good birth time for him. Otherwise, I would love to do his chart. But that's something that I think we can all focus on this week. What is my level of integrity, and how am I engaging with that? Or am I abandoning ship, and then I basically get what I asked for? So let's turn to how we can, I'm just going to switch this back to the present time so I can move the chart around more fluidly. And we are going to go back through the houses, starting with Aries. Now, I got a comment on the full moon video, and frequently I do. Sometimes I mention these things in advance, but this person maybe doesn't follow me much. But the individual was saying that for Libra, the moon was not in alignment with the sun. And this happens because we're changing the ascendant. And usually that's roughly every hour or two, depending on the time of the year. Different signs will ascend in different speeds. And so up to 2 hours of one ascendant. And as you're moving forward in 2 hours, something as fast moving as the moon will change. And that's why you'll see also in the annuals that I didn't want to keep changing the chart, because it just ends up messing up all of the aspects. It just gets way too complicated as you're going through 12 months of astrology. So I do this for these particular videos because we're focusing on one topic. But just keep that in mind. If I was talking about the degrees of when the Cazimi was happening, it's not going to hold in this chart. Go back to the beginning and you will see the event chart. So we'll take up the Venus Cazimi, and we'll start with Aries on the ascendant. And that is going to be where we find this whole 10th house Capricorn story that I was speaking to in the introduction. So Aries, you particularly should be listening to that introduction because it's really speaking to you very personally, where this is about how am I showing up in my ambitions, perhaps for my family, How am I showing up in terms of my career responsibilities or ambitions? Mars, again, in getting a new charge up in your 10th house means that you probably have a new vision for your career. You might have a whole new relationship to hierarchy in a general sense or in a specific sense. Maybe it's with reference to a hierarchy that you are working with in your career or social hierarchy. If you're not working, this still applies with how you step out into the world around you. How are you engaging? There's now a new requirement of you. You now need to think about new ways of engaging with society, with the world around you, with responsibility, with your ambition. Your personal ambition is there, whether you're getting paid for it or not. So 10th house can be described as vocation. Even if you're retired, you have hopefully something that makes you want to get out the front door. This would be a good time to consider who you have as mentors, or if you are in a position to be a mentor for someone. And that's where the Saturnian, Capricornian energy of life experience comes in very handy. It's probably better to have a mentor who's at least gone through a Saturn return, the first one at least, and even better, the second one, where you can start to learn through the School of Hard Knocks, which is very much Saturn, very Capricornian, or teach through that. And that's something you might be contemplating. So this could be something to do with a marriage, because Venus is ruling your house of marriage, relationships, business partners, partners of all kinds, relationships of all kinds. And there's something starting afresh there as well. And Mars is ruling your 8th house of marriage as well. Venus rules your 2nd house of family, money, valuables as well. And Mars is also the ruler of your yourself, your ascendant, your rising sign, if you are especially Aries rising, or your sun or your moon, if you're Aries sun or moon. Mars, Venus are really putting you there in that tightrope between what you need and how you might need to manage yourself with others, whether it's a hierarchical relationship or a marriage partner, a marital relationship, or dynamic of parenting and child rearing, for example. All of those can factor into this moment in time. So very big new cycle for you because it's an angular house. It's putting you in a whole new spectrum, let's say, with your ruler being reborn in this very powerful 10th house where it is very strong. Even if it's in the heart of the sun, it's emerging over the next 6 weeks or let's say 2 months. It's emerging into visibility where you'll start to see the fruits of this activity, the fruits of what is coming forward, just coming from what you decide now in the first 10 days of the month of January, first 10 days of 2026. So you've got a 2-year cycle here. I think it's February 2028 that Mars comes around for a renewal. And I'm sorry I don't have those dates for you. I will put them in the description box below. I thought I'd written everything down, but I may have left a piece of paper somewhere else. Anyway, 2 years, and this is your ruler, so very, very significant for Aries. So I will leave you here and hope to see you in the next video. Taurus, your ruler, Venus, is being reborn this week on the 6th of January, but really it's just a whole story of this week. If you've heard the introduction, you'll know all about that. And here it's really got a lot to do with your connection to what you have faith in, what you believe to be true, and how that operates in your life. What is the guiding philosophy or your guiding faith in your life? This can be quite literally a renewal of faith. You've gone through quite a lot of change with Uranus in your first house. It's still there until the 26th of April. But that part of that dynamic is also about how you are showing up differently in life itself. And Pluto is doing the same. Now, I'll get back with another video about Pluto in your 10th house, because that's where all of these planets are moving into. So what you decide here supports how you are out in your career or out in your world or as a parent or with reference to your own parents, how you show up for your parents, for example, or what's going on in their experience. The 9th house I think of as the father. This is more the Indian way of looking at that. The 9th house representing the father, 10th is parents, 4th house is the mother and the lineage. And we look at Mercury representing the 2nd house of family as well. All of those dynamic changes are here for you to assess in terms of what's my purpose, what do I believe in, and why do I do what I do? What motivates me? What gets me out of bed? And how do I want to start that afresh? It could be something as simple as deciding I want to learn more. I need to study more, or I want to teach more, because Jupiter is also in your third house of learning, skills-based learning, or early childhood education, or practical learning, but also teaching. So those are different ways of looking at all of that. Mars for you rules your house of relationship as Venus rules yourself in your first house, but Venus also rules your house of work and your everyday life, and and Mars is also the ruler of your 12th house, of your things that are hidden from you. So these factors also come into it. Where do I sacrifice aspects of myself to buy the peace, for example, in my day-to-day work? How is that working for me? Is that something that I really want to continue? Is there something that I realize I want work with more purpose and value? A higher sense of me being myself as I do what I need to do, with a sense of my life's work, my life's purpose, not just like the job. And it doesn't matter if you have a job on the side that supports your life's work. Your life work is whatever it is. I should have mentioned this in the beginning, but Capricorn is about humility, humbleness. Saturn is the same. We don't have to be famous and extravagant to be worthy. We are worthy. And you can be like the cashier, and just in the manner in which you are greeting people, in the manner in which you're doing your job, in the manner in which you bring money home to your family, or support a cause that's dear to your heart, that's who you are. That's how you're being who you are. And that matters way, way more than how many likes you have on social media or how many accolades you might get. Saturn is ruling this ninth house from the 11th house. So that part of your future is tied into this, but also how you serve others, how you reach out into community, how you become seen. And this has been the last couple of years of Saturn, almost 3 years now of Saturn in your 11th house. It's like, how do I show up for others in a group situation, in a collective situation? That has to come through now. What is your higher purpose and meaning in life? What you have faith in, what you feel you're here to do. And don't denigrate small things. The whole universe is built on small things, day-to-day gestures, hidden, anonymous gestures by humble, anonymous people. Those are the things that build our day-to-day reality. If there's some realization around a relationship that needs renewing, it'll also be based in the sense of what it is that you feel is important to you right now. There can be relationships that meet the end of a cycle, and you realize that I just can't do that anymore, or I can't do that job anymore. I can't work for that boss anymore. I can't work for that company anymore. Or I'm realizing this is what I want. That's how I want to invest myself. That would be part of this dynamic with Mars and the Sun conjoining Venus, your ruler. So I think that's already a pretty big agenda for the week. Taurus, I'll see you in the next video. So with Gemini on the ascendant, your ruler is in the 8th house, along with this triple conjunction in Capricorn. Mercury is not yet involved in this conjunction. It's not yet affected by it, but it is under the beams of the sun. And so your ruler is not necessarily operating in a way that you can rely on either. A lot of what's going on this week is not going to be clear until we get well past January. So you'll be starting things, you'll be moving in a different direction, and they will accelerate from the second half of February and into March. And if you've got the annual forecast, you'll already know that. You'll already have heard that. And so also think in terms of the future. 8th house for you is connected to intimacy. That can be your own intimacy in terms of your psychology. It's a very psychological house for you, especially as your ruler is there, and your ruler is the ruler of your 4th house, of your emotions and your psychological foundation, your connection to your lineage. And it's all opposed by Jupiter in your house of family and money, resources, what is there for you. So there's a lot of questioning around this. How do other people support me? How do I need support? Am I getting the support that I need? Maybe I need to ask for more support. Or maybe I need to be the one to provide more support. I need to be proactive. This is new cycles in the eighth house of other people's money. What you receive from others and how you interact with others once you become connected in a relationship. And that can include client type relationships, for example. Jupiter rules your seventh house of the relationship and the way you might work with clients, and it's in your second house of money. And Venus, of course, representing money, is being reborn in your eighth house of other people's money, and she's also ruling your fifth house of entrepreneurship. That's also, of course, the house of love. That is very significant in terms of the eighth house, because that can also be around sexual intimacy, and you might be starting something new, or there may be something on the horizon. So when I say this, as I said earlier, it's not about what's happening this week. These are cycles that are beginning. So you're looking ahead with Venus 9 months, with Mars 2 years. And then later, your ruler Mercury will be conjoining the sun in your ninth house. We'll talk about that in a separate video, and that's trinal to you as well. So another rebirth moment. And so this is something that you can look at in terms of the foundations of your life, how you want to start afresh in areas of collecting income from clients, or what you receive from other people in terms of advice, or how you might counsel or advise people. The eighth house also represents occult studies, the mystery schools of life, like astrology and tarot, meditation, transformation through crisis, transformation through things that happen in ways that require us to really show up. And the eighth house, of course, by that also represents things that can go wrong, illness and difficulty, psychological problems, depression. These are potentials. It's not going to be there for everyone. I would need to see your natal chart. But Mars rules your sixth house of obstacles and difficulties, health issues, everyday health habits, and the things that you need to work at every day to keep your ship afloat, as it were. And Mars is the one being reborn in the eighth house for you with the sun. And again, things will not necessarily show up based on what you're deciding now or taking action on going forward from now. Mars is not necessarily going to show results until March. Same with Venus. Venus won't show her results until after mid-February, after the eclipse in February and the eclipse in March. So you will start to see these results, but doesn't mean things are not happening behind the scenes. It doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing things behind the scenes. Keep in mind that all of this newness is affecting you very personally as Uranus goes into your first house of self, sun, moon, or rising in Gemini, and changing you. You're having to show up in a very different way. Saturn is ruling the eighth house from the 10th, where we also find the North Node, which is an old story for you already. You've experienced this through 2025 and with Saturn since March 2023, with Neptune for the last 13 years, 14 years, and no, even 15 years by this point, almost. And so now what we're looking at here is this vision of yourself in the world. What do I do? How do I do it? And that's coming through a mastery. This is the eighth house Capricorn and all that recycling of cycles, renewal of cycles. There's something about you that you're understanding, and that can be a human understanding of psychology or personal understanding of psychology, overcoming fears. This is very powerful with Mars coming into the heart of the sun in your eighth house, overcoming fears. I thought I couldn't do it. Now I realize I can, or I must. Overcoming family trauma, overcoming family patterns, overcoming issues in a marriage or a business partnership. All of that is supported by this desire for new things coming in the 10th house that Saturn, Neptune have been bringing, and the North Node is showing you karmically it's time for. Right, so that's it for Gemini. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. And for Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, we have, of course, Jupiter in your sign opposing this huge confluence of planets in your seventh house of relationship. These are angular houses. You're both cardinal signs You are about that kind of dynamic energy that starts things, that gets things going. And here there's something about what you're reconsidering with Jupiter in your first house. There's probably something to do with the way you're seeing yourself, your role in the world, how you show up for others, especially if this is your ascendant, but also for Sun and Moon in Cancer. And so Jupiter is showing you already since the 9th of June where it is that you want to fit in and be there for other people and where you need to change the way that you're showing up. We're seeing this in opposition to the Venus, Sun, and Mars conjunction that's happening pretty much all this week, but listen to the introduction for all of the details around that. We also have Mercury there. So there's a lot that you're relating to in a totally different way that has to do with either a life partner or a business partner or clients, the kind of people that you're working with that are important to you in your everyday life. You can consider it as a theme of relationships in general. And this is getting just a massive reboot. So the whole idea of friendships and relational dynamics and client-based relations, in marriages, in all of these different areas of your life, they are all starting anew. There's something that is ending and coming to fruition as we go forward in time over for Venus the next 9 months, and for Mars 2 years of the cycle between Sun and Mars. So think long term in terms of how you want to show up in relationships and who you want to show up in your frame of reference around these important relational dynamics. This is a mirror back to you also. So the seventh house is also where we see ourselves in the other or through the other. And this can show you a lot about yourself and how you want to engage differently. Often with Cancer, there's an accommodation. There's a desire to accommodate and be kind. And we see this with Venus as well. There's a desire to be there for others, but that really has consequences. Jupiter rules your house of health, and certainly through the month of December, if you're anything like me, as a Cancer rising and moon, you will have encountered a certain amount of health issues or some kind of a structural issue that made it difficult to do what you do in the usual way. I see that as a kind of a prior lesson to get us to this place of where we need to make new choices. And now this is the week where these new choices become really significant. They're all new cycles that are beginning, but all kind of mixed in together. And so your ambition, your relational dynamics, the qualities that you want to manifest in relationships, and the people that you want to relate to are all really significant. Venus rules your house, the 11th house of good fortune, or the house of, that you could call great gains, the things that you receive that can be accolades or even financial support or support from other people. That can also be the people who support you in a different way. And there's some different dynamic around that too. Venus also rules your 4th house of home, your family, your lineage, what makes you feel safe and secure. And there again, there's something that's changing. This can be a new dynamic because of a relationship that's either beginning or ending, or a new way of being in relationship that will affect your hearth and home, or your sense of security, your intimacy, your your psychological and emotional strength and foundation. With Mars, Mars rules your 5th house of children. It also rules your career. So this dynamic is going to really show up in terms of your creative projects, in terms of perhaps in the life of your children as well. This can be new relationships that they're engaging in that you are therefore relating to in a new way. A new partner for your child becomes a new relationship for you as well, for example. Or if the children are moving through a younger life, there may be something that's changing in your relational dynamic because of what the children are engaging with through school, through their play groups and things like that. And Venus also rules the 11th house of social connections and networks and society. So that will also change the dynamic around that. For Cancer, it's for all the cardinal signs, this is a really significant transit, more so than the others, but everybody, of course, is affected. But the cardinal signs even more potently because it will be visible. It will be really clear, the results of whatever is coming through these new cycles. Mars ruling your 10th house of profession and the 5th house of entrepreneurship can really have you working in new ways. This is a whole new cycle of developing client relationships or developing relational dynamics with a business partner, especially because it's involving Venus as well. This can give you more stability, financial gains. This will coincide also with Jupiter moving into your 2nd house after the end of June in 2026. So there's a lot about money and finances coming through, and this is part of the Venus cycle with the moon at this point that she's pointing to as she rules that 11th house of what you gain from what you do out in the world. The dynamic around siblings can also be there. Venus rules your 11th house of elder siblings. And that dynamic has anyway been changing in some way, maybe through their own life changing or through your relationship with them changing. South Node in your 3rd house of siblings and extended family and so on is showing that there's a change of dynamic in the way that you connect with them too. And it's ruled by Mercury, which is also in your 7th house. And but it won't get to connect with the sun exactly until it reaches your 8th house, where we find Pluto. More on that in another video. Saturn is in your 9th house and it's ruling this 7th house. Saturn rules both your 8th and 9th, your 7th and 8th houses, and Saturn is ruling the 7th from the 9th house. So there's something of a higher vision that you have that is connected to your purpose. Now, relationships have to have meaning and purpose for you now. Your purpose in terms of how you engage with people might be changing. You might have realized that over the last 2.5 or so years with Saturn, and especially in 2025 with Saturn and the North Node being in the 9th house, and maybe overall in a more diffused way as your belief systems and your sense of your what you rely on in the world, what you have faith in the world has been determining a lot of how you show up in the world. Saturn, Neptune are still in the 9th house for you. So this is very much connected at this time. These new cycles are connected to that higher sense of meaning and purpose that you have for your life. Both the 9th house and the 6th house for Cancer is ruled by Jupiter. And that Jupiter is in your sign. So this is a year of meaning for you. And that already started last year. But this is a moment where you get to decide now in a very clear way what is worthy of my attention and energy, what is not. How do I restructure myself so I can do the best that I can, both for myself and for others? So it's a really wonderful opportunity, but it requires perhaps disappointing other people or walking away from things that you were trying to keep on life support and realized it's way too late now. So good luck, Cancer. I'll see you in the next video. Leo, sun, moon, and rising. This is all happening in your 6th house of your day-to-day life, your health, the way that you structure your day or your schedule overall, the way that you engage in the obstacles and challenges that come through you. So there's a new approach that's necessary here that might literally be a new job or a new regime around your health, for example, a new way of showing up for yourself. The 6th house is everything that keeps you going. It's paying the bills, it's paying the rent, doing the job that pays the rent. It's the way you eat and take care of your health. We see the South Node in your 2nd house of consumption and food and what supports you, and that can represent what you eat, even drugs or anything that you might consume, might take. Now, Jupiter is in the 12th house of self-undoing as well. So there may be a realization around an addiction, for example. That addiction might be showing you something that has caused issues around psychological trauma or family patterns, like inherited patterns of addiction, inherited patterns of fears around something. What is the fear? Is it fear of being seen, fear of success? Venus is ruling your 10th house, where Uranus has been changing the way you show up in the world for some time now, since since April, May 2018. And Venus is getting regenerated now in your 6th house. So there's something that you're aiming for something new now in the way that you reach out into the world, in the way that people see you, because the 10th house is also your reputational house. It's how people see you and the way that they kind of talk about you. And so if there is anything here that you realize, no, I need to do a bit more spit and polish and get things back on track, this is your time. This is your moment to really say, okay, this doesn't work for me anymore. I have to stop this. The sun is your ruler. The sun is the one that is triggering these new cycles. Um, and it's giving new energy, let's say, providing new energy and life to the Venus and Mars cycles. Venus, you will find now for the next 9 months, is going to influence this 10th house of yours, and Mars for the next 2 years. And Mars will influence your 4th house of your psychological self, your home and lineage, your place of security and comfort. And Mars also represents your 9th house of what you believe, people who might be there for you as authority figures, or you becoming one. This would be another way that that could show up with the Venus-Mars connection to the 9th and 10th house. You decide, you know what, I've gone through so much that I now know I can be a great counselor. And especially because you have Jupiter going through your 1st house as of the 30th of June this year, you can prepare yourself if this is the thing where you're like, I need to step out more, I need to show up more. Often with Leo, paradoxically, Leo can often really hide its light, hide the gifts, hide itself through self-doubt, through shame, and these again will be found in the chart. It's not always like these, very confident solar individuals. Often it's either bluster and over the top because it's hiding this insecurity, or there's the insecurity that prevents the Leo from shining. So this would be like, what do I need to change day to day? How do I need to relate to others, relate to my values? That's the Venus. Relate to my career, relate to my vocation, my ambitions. And how do I need to, in terms of the Mars, relate to my family lineage, or relate to what I grew up with? How do I need to understand all of those impacts on my life and overcome that? So Saturn in the 8th house can help you with that, overcoming the fear, overcoming a sense that nobody's there for me, and realizing I don't need other people there for me. I want to walk this journey with equals. I don't want to be reliant on other people. And this would be in the 6th house, the Dusthana house, which means that this Du means difficulties. Dusthana is a place, like Pakistan is a place. So Dusthana means a place of difficulties and obstacles and challenges to overcome. And this would be your opportunity to realize, whoa, I've been underselling myself, underestimating my value. And this would be the opportunity to shed that and start new cycles here. Saturn is finishing up now, just over a month to go in your 8th house. So working through family trauma, family patterns, inherited patterns, intimacy challenges, and all of that is affecting the 6th house of your health or your overall sense of well-being and how you show up for yourself or others every single day. Part of what gives Leo integrity is the fact that Capricorn is on the 6th house. So the true Leo archetype is integrity. I show up and do the damn thing every single day. That's the message of the sun. But it's especially astrologically because Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and that's on your 6th house. So you get out of bed and do the thing you have to do every single day. And for the shadow archetype, that won't be happening, but you will then feel a lack of self-esteem. So this is the opportunity to check, how am I checking out? Am I not taking responsibility? That's the Jupiter in the 12th can also do that, where there's a little bit of daydreaming or letting go of responsibilities. And here you will be challenged to do that differently going forward. If you're interested in learning these kinds of things and how that I can see these things in the chart, I'm doing the beginner's course and the intermediate course, depending on your level. So check for those in the description below this video, because with Saturn, North Node, Neptune in your 8th house, a lot of you are probably thinking along the lines of astrology. And as I mentioned, you're in a position right now where you can really bring something out to the world, counseling, advising, helping in different ways, showing up and showing others how to show up as well. So that's something to think about. So good luck with that, Leo. I'll see you in the next video. So Virgo, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, this is in your 5th house. It's trinal to you, and that's really favorable. So all of these new beginnings are coming through the house of joy. That's the fifth house, and the sun is very happy in the fifth house, even though it struggles a little bit, ruled by Saturn. It dims the light. This is when the sun is in the northern hemisphere. In the tradition of astrology, it is at its lowest ebb, although ironically, it's also when the Earth is closest to the sun. But you're having a new cycle with Venus and Mars in your fifth house of creativity, children. Mercury is also there, which makes me raise my eyebrows even more. And the topic of children, perhaps you're having children, thinking about children, or needing to tend more to your children, or your children are going through life cycle changes themselves, and you're working through how you are now adjusting to their own life cycle changes. Mercury, your ruler, will be connecting with the sun in your sixth house. So that will be around the things that you need to take responsibility for. So we'll talk about that in a separate video. But at the time of this conjunction, when Venus and the sun are together, there is the south node still in your first house. And when Venus and Mars are together, the moon is at 10 degrees. Sorry, the moon is trining. Hang on, how does that work? Yeah, the moon is trining at 17, 18 degrees when Venus and Mars are together. So from your first house, so you're really deeply implicated in this. That's going to be something to pay attention to, because there's a new creative impulse that's coming through you, as the south node has also been, and the moon is highlighting yourself and your emotional nature and feelings around this thing over the next couple of days, where you've been thinking there's parts of the way you are and the way you have been that don't fit any longer, and you're ready to let that go. And South Node is the most spiritual aspect of our whole chart. The nodal axis is very karmic, and the South Node is very spiritual. It's about understanding that there's just no, don't sweat the small stuff, is quite literally that. And you know, that understanding the material world just does not really have the same grip on you as it did even in 2024. So there's a whole different philosophy of life that you're coming through with, and that has been assisted, and certainly in a very impactful way this last year, by Uranus going through your ninth house, where it's also gone into your 10th house middle of last year, and it will complete that journey into the 10th house by the 26th of April. So what you're looking at here, if there is a new project, is it a business project, a new relationship, a love relationship, an issue with children, do we want more? Do we want any? Those kinds of questions are going to influence your social status, which is the 10th house, which is also ruled by Mercury, your ruler. Mars is ruling the 8th house of intimacy, and Jupiter is ruling the 7th house of your relationship, where we find Saturn, now Jupiter ruling the Saturn, which is the ruler of this 5th house. So there's something about relationship becoming serious. What is the relationship? It's something that you're either tying the knot and saying, I do, or you're realizing there's something new we need to invigorate in our relational dynamic to look towards a better future, different future, more expanded vision of the future. What is transpiring here is not necessarily going to show up clearly for the next couple of months. It'll be much more sort of by the first and second week of March that things will start to take shape in a way that you can kind of grapple with, and realize, okay, this is where we're going with that. This is where it all started, and this is where we're going. So with Venus, she's the ruler of your house of money as well, and she rules that ninth house of your purpose, where Taurus is, and that's a 9-month cycle. So this is where your focus is on your sense of maybe something to do with income, and how your purpose is tied to your income or your values. Second house is also values, but second house is also family. Everything that supports you is in the second house, your day-to-day habits. And so we're going to get a lot of activity in your 6th house of that everyday stuff, how you work, how you show up, how's your health, and all of those different things are also getting reconfigured, we say, with Pluto in your 6th house. So all that's happening in your 5th house, find your joy, find what brings me out of myself and into connection, what makes me feel happy, what brings me affection and love. How do I share that with other people? Am I sharing it with other people? Am I withholding? The North Node is in your 7th house of relationship. So start to realize that there's part of this bigger shift of 2025 and the first half of 2026 in the nodal axis has been about teaching you how to be in a relationship in a way that's much, much more harmonious for you, or bringing in a new relationship in an important new way. So if you are becoming a parent, or if you are changing your role as a parent, that will show up over the next few weeks, and then you'll be able to replan as you go forward. With reference to Mars, Mars represents your third house of communication, your extended family, your siblings, your everyday local space, commuting, short-term travel, and traveling to get your groceries and doing stuff like that. But Mars also represents your house of intimacy, and since it's also connecting here, much like the Saturn in your seventh that's ruling the fifth house of love and romance and so on, Mars is ruling the house of intimacy. So it's a new spark of intimacy for you as well, a new way of relating to love overall, to the product of love, children, to creative impulse, which is passion and desire, and the creative impulse that brings in the fifth house, but also perhaps to your romance overall. And even if it's not a new relationship, it's giving some renewal to a relationship. Now, if that's not happening, don't sit around and wait for this to happen automatically. So that axis of Pisces Virgo can be very passive. Don't sit around and wait. You need to take action. This is cardinality. These cardinal energies are very, very strong. You need to take initiative. Now, in the opposition to Pluto, you might be finding that some of the pressure of what's changing or what's going to change in the dynamic of this fifth house novelty is many new cycles is challenging your sense of what you thought your future was about. This is the Jupiter retrograding, kind of showing you, oh wait, it could be more of this, it could be more like that. It can be, it's not necessarily negative. I think it's something actually relatively positive. Jupiter is also in your house of great gains, so it's where you earn money from the thing that you do, or it's where you might get accolades for what you do and how you do it. And certainly, because we're looking at your ruler here involved with this whole bigger dynamic, even though it's not part of the tight renewal signature, it's definitely conjoining the sun. There's something that you're plotting, planning, preparing for that is not going to emerge until mid-March. And again, that also is because Jupiter is stationing direct on the 11th of March. So lots to plan for there, Virgo. Lots of very, I think, very favorable and auspicious things that can begin. If you're thinking, for example, of quitting a job and moving out into entrepreneurship, start the strategy now. Don't quit the job now. Start the strategy. Put all the ducks in a row. Stack up your Jenga or whatever it is, and get yourself moving in that direction, because once Uranus goes into your 10th house, that will be when all systems go. All right. Make the most of that, and I will see you in the next video. Libra, your ruler is getting reborn in your fourth house of your lineage, your family of origin, or the family that you create, your emotional structure and psychological foundation. There's something very poignant here. There's something that you need to feel more of in an emotional sense or a psychological sense. You want more support. You want more or a different way of feeling supported. You want some new structure. Perhaps it's a literal structure. I want a new home. I want a new way of organizing my family life, my home and house and property. Fourth house is land even. And Mars rules your second house of investments. Venus is ruling the eighth house of other people's money. So there might be something actually strategic around that. And it might have to do with a marriage partner. Mars is ruling your seventh house of relationships as well. You're the other. And of course, Venus rules you. So this tie-in is very much linked to who you are with. You know, who do you spend time with? Is it also connected to work? Because we also have Saturn still, your exaltation ruler, still in your sixth house till it'll be gone overnight from the 13th to the 14th of February. But it's still there. And that's part of this configuration, because Saturn is ruling this configuration. And at the same time, Saturn itself is ruled by this Jupiter opposing this configuration all of this week. So you're thinking about your marriage, you're thinking about your job, you're thinking about your career, you're perhaps thinking about your reputation, your overall sense of what have I contributed to the world? Am I happy with that? Do I need to create a better foundation so I can prepare myself to kind of take off and do bigger things in the world? Because that's going to change. If you have listened to your annual forecast, the links to purchase that are below. If you listen to your annual forecast, you'll see this is a year where you're reaching out into new career opportunities, new career, or let's say opportunities to show up in a bigger way out in the world. Now, if you have Libra, rising sun or moon, and Jupiter has not brought you anything great in the 10th house, it might be because your natal Jupiter is not really helpful, or it's blocked in some way by other planet aspects. But it also can be Jupiter just brings more, and it brings focus and attention to that part of your chart. It also will depend on your moon, because Jupiter is ruled by the moon. So how your moon operates in your chart will impact that as well. It's not like Santa Claus shows up and gives you all the nice things. It depends on the context that it's come. So that means your natal chart matters. But nonetheless, the opportunities are there, and they come through sixth house, hard work. It's not going to be handed to you on a platter. This can also be where you realize, I got to let go of a whole bunch of stuff. This doesn't work for me anymore. The North Node in the sixth house says, I need a new job. I need a new schedule. I need a new context for the work that I'm doing. I need new colleagues or staff. My staff are not supporting me. My support structure is not supporting me. And that can also be your emotional support structure not supporting you and needing to be clear about a new way of showing up. So all of this is in the fourth house. It's very hidden. It's very deep. But the fourth house also represents aspects that are again, sort of midnight in the sky. It's everything that's really in the peak of the night, darkness. And it also represents endings for that, in that same way. So it's like the day is ending. It's like midnight. The day is ending. Fourth house is endings. And so really focus as much on what you need to end and let go of, especially with Saturn in the sixth house. Just keep moving things on. Let it go, let it go, let it go, until you get to this point of what needs to remain and what do I really need to be happy? What do I really need to be secure? What do I really need to feel that I can stand on my own 2 feet and also be there for other people? Not only be there for other people, this would be the big message for you. Mercury is ruling your 12th. It also rules your 9th house of purpose. And so 12th house is the house of self-undoing. It's where we can do things in a way that's not helpful. And here we need to see this aspect of the moon and the south node, which is in opposition to the sixth house. It can be that you're realizing now, especially with the help of Saturn over the last couple of years, where things have been pushed to the limit, especially Neptune in the sixth house makes you feel like you're Cinderella doing everything for everyone else and you never get to go to the ball. And that dynamic now is showing you exactly what it is that needs to change right now. So you got a long, let's say 6 months journey with the south node still in your 12th house, a little bit more, almost 7. And with Venus in this new cycle, your ruler in this new cycle, you've got 9 months to focus on how that's going to show up, because then Venus is going to be retrograding from your second house of self-worth and income back into your first house. And that's October through November. So think about this in terms of yourself. And it's like, okay, if I have, just throw out a number, if I have 6 years to live, what do I want to do with those 6 years? You know, just make it something that really focuses your attention on yourself. This is a kind of maximal moment of necessity for you to find, this is how I can go forward. This is what I need to go forward with, so that you're not going into something without preparation and support. So a big year of change, because then of course you have Saturn, Neptune moving into your 7th house of relationship, and that will change you by extension in the opposition. We'll come back and talk more about that. Get the annual forecast. You'll hear a lot more about these things for you, Libra, because as a cardinal sign, there's a lot of change for you, a lot going on, especially just now, right off the bat in January, as there is often in January for you, but this is particularly strong. All right, good luck, Libra. I will see you in the next video. And for Scorpio, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, your ruler is being reborn in the heart of the Sun this week as well. Listen to the introduction for all of those details. It's a 2-year cycle that is beginning, and it's in the third house of how you communicate, the choices that you make, and the willpower that you use. This is why we know Scorpio are they're super determined people. One of the ways of describing Scorpio is unrelenting. You're relentless. And that's because you've got Capricorn on the third house ruled by Saturn. It's like you don't stop. And especially when your ruler is there, you are unrelenting. So whatever it is, make sure that it's worth your time. Make sure that the choice is something that feels important to you and not just like in this moment necessary, but you're looking long term. You're developing a cycle that's important for you over 2 years. So this Capricorn energy is about taking responsibility. What do you need to take responsibility for? Is it a new way of communicating? Is it new skills that you need to develop? Is there something that's shifting in terms of your work and you now need to tool up or teach? Because of course Jupiter also is in the opposite sign. It's in an opposition, as you'll hear from the introduction as well, this opposition from your ninth house of what you know and what you have faith in, what you believe in, higher knowledge and wisdom. And this can be a fantastic opportunity to start helping others by mentoring, teaching, helping them retool if you're not doing it yourself. Or you might decide, actually, I do want to learn new things. I want to learn and expand my understanding of life or things in general, or a specific subject that you want to work on. Venus is, so Mars is your ruler, but it also, Mars also rules your sixth house of work. Your everyday job might be something that you're considering as well. New enterprise, what do I want to participate in? What do I want to, how do I want to use my time and energy every day? That's the third house, using your short-term goals and your aims and your willpower, communications and exchanges of all kinds. This is contracts as well. This would be a time where you might decide there's new contracts that need to be decided, but I wouldn't necessarily do anything this particular week. Let the newness seep in, then take action. So sometimes you just have to jump in, but if you can, try to wait maybe towards the end of the month when you've kind of got a better lay of the land and decide to sign a contract then. But again, sometimes life doesn't work out that way. It doesn't mean you shouldn't. It's just that this would be, you're still in a phase of trying to get to grips with what this is, what's coming up, and what do I want to change? What do I want to leave behind? This will be a new way of relating to your family, your extended family, siblings, and so on. We find Mercury in the third and the South Node and Moon up in the 11th house. So there's something to do with perhaps an elder sibling, or it can be something to do with socializing. The third house is kind of like casual friends. It's your golf buddies, your coffee pals, and your dog walking buddies. And or it's your neighborhood, the neighbors. Hi, Fred, how you doing? And then the 11th house is the people that you're reaching out to, that you are engaging with socially. And there's certainly a big change around that. And that's especially because the South Node has been there. So you're kind of like saying goodbye all through 2025 and much of 2026. You're like, we're done here. Nothing necessarily wrong with the people you're spending time with, but you're realizing I'm not like that anymore. I don't share the same ideas. I don't share the same motives and interests. I'm not going to waste my time in this area. I have different goals, different visions. That's the long-term goals in the 11th house, the sense of the future. And Mercury is ruling that from the third. So a lot of this planning is starting right off the bat, no pressure. But just think about it, really sit down with yourself and say, what is my ideal outcome in this lifetime? What do I want to move into? Because of course, the second half of the year, you've got Jupiter moving into the 10th house. So a new social status, a change of status. It doesn't mean a new job necessarily, but it might do for some of you, especially because Saturn and Neptune are moving into your 6th house of everyday work. It's Saturn that is ruling this from the 5th. What brings me joy? What makes me happy? How do I express my creativity? This is where the North Node has been. And that's what you want to put your attention on as well. You also have Uranus moving. Uranus is ruled by Venus here in the third, moving out of your house of relationship over the next 3-ish months, almost 4 months, 3.5 months, we'll call it. And And that's going to change how you are in relationship and maybe change the relationships themselves or your intimate partner, your marriage partner, business partner type relationships. So there's something big that's changing here with Jupiter going into the top of the chart. You don't worry about it. It's going to be helpful, good, beneficial for you. And especially the first 6 months of the year, Jupiter is trinal to you in a house that it loves, the ninth house. Of which it is the natural ruler and it's exalted in a fellow water sign. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. I would simply contemplate, what do I need to do now? Where do I want to put myself going forward? And what do I need to let go of? Again, for many people, it's more of a question of, what am I saying goodbye to? What am I recognizing is just done? And, without trying to revive it, I just walk away and I say, thanks very much. This is the new thing coming. So good luck with that, Scorpio. I will see you in the next video. Sagittarius, there's your cough. I always seem to cough for Sagittarius. Sorry about that. So your ruler is still there in the 8th house, still retrograde until the 11th of March, and playing a really important role this week by opposition to these new cycles that are beginning in your 2nd house of money and values and your self-worth, your family, what supports you, your sources of income or your investments. All of this is taking a completely new frame of reference. So Venus rules also your house of great gains, social connections, like social groups, networks, your vision for your future. And that's based here on either finances or your values. Mars itself, and also Venus also rules your work. A lot of you are in the position of questioning the work that you're doing, changing the work. Literally, I'm done here. I've done it. I'm not doing this anymore. Doesn't mean you are letting go of the skills, but you're letting go of the context for sure, because also as of late April, by the last week of April, we've got Uranus leaving your 6th house for good. And that's your house of everyday work and the environment of your work. And that's changing dramatically as well. So your ruler in the 8th has been showing you where your mental health is affected by what you're doing. It's also the ruler, Jupiter is ruling not only yourself, sun, moon, or ascendant, but also your 4th house of what grounds you, your psychological foundation, your emotional foundation, and your literal foundation. Where do I live? Do I have property? What kind of property? Saturn is there ruling the 2nd house. There may be something about home, needing to move for whatever reason, or wanting to buy or sell property. Potentially inheriting property, for example, because Jupiter is in your 8th house, and that is the house of what you receive from others, often through crisis. So that resolves to inheritance often. Mars is in the 2nd house, ruling the 12th house, which is also a house of letting go, where we say goodbye to people, where we let go of certain ways of being. It's also the spiritual house of your chart. It's where you connect spiritually to yourself, your life. It's everything that is unconscious, also including sleeping, the sleeping state. Meditative states, especially 8th and 12th, are very strongly related to that. And that ties in this conjunction. Because of these conjunctions, virtually all of the chart is impacted, especially by rulership of Saturn, which is ruled by Jupiter. It pretty much brings everybody into the game. There's nobody left out here. And so even the moon is getting a look in, because she's ruling Jupiter. So everybody's in on this. You are moving in different directions based on the thing that you need right now in this moment in your life to feel stable and secure and bring that stability in. And that's coming through overcoming awareness around fears or family patterns, inherited trauma, inherited difficulties, counseling, either being there for others or being counseled and cared for by somebody. And all of that is going to regenerate your sense of your value, your personal value, and the notion of values in general, and how you operate through that. The Mars dynamic is deeply impacting your 12th house, but also your 5th house of love and romance and fun. How do you enjoy life? How do you express that joy? You've got Saturn and Neptune both moving in there soon, just weeks away. first Neptune, then Saturn. And that's going to bring you a new opportunity to express what brings you joy and take something that you love, a passion project or a hobby, and make it last, give it legs, and make it something that you take seriously, that to the extent that you might even want to build a business. Certainly that South Node in the 10th also emphasizes this sense that something's over, I'm giving up this job, I'm giving up this old career ambition. It doesn't mean it was wrong. It just means the cycle is ending. And especially if this cycle began with the nodal axis, if this cycle began 2007, maybe late 2006, 2007, all of 2007. So if that's the cycle that is ending and it's about work, then take this to heart and really focus in on the values that are driven by what you feel capable of, what sustains you, what you want to keep moving forward. Have I got the capacity to do the thing that I'd like to do? Would be a big question right now. And then the finances flow from that. Don't think the reverse. Do I have the money and then can I do the thing? But first think, okay, capacity, and then the money will come. So you're thinking in terms of new work to bring new sources of income. Venus is in the house of income, ruling the 6th house and ruling your 11th house of gains. So think in terms of what is necessary for me now, what supports me, and how do I work through what is valuable to me right now. This might even have something to do again with, if it's not about substance, because Mars rules the 12th, plus the 2nd house is all about substances or food, any addiction type things, there's a new opportunity here to clear that up as well. Venus ruling the 6th house as well. Letting go, letting go, letting go. Think in terms of old cycle ending. This is the new thing. This is a brand new year. And that's more than just symbolic. That is really, we're not just in a new year, we're in a new phase of our existence. Remember in the beginning I said, if you heard the introduction, you heard that the existence is, to exist it's this notion of being out in the world, engaging out in the world. And that's where you want to put yourself through your values, your core values. All right. And your self-worth, most importantly. All right, Sagittarius, good luck with that. Capricorn, you will have deduced by now that this is all about you. You are having quite a massive renewal at this stage, and that will be every aspect of your life that is covered, and that's no exaggeration. So your life is renewing at this point. So much of what you are engaging with is going to be entering into a new phase. And you're going to see these results over the next few weeks, probably more likely to be manifesting through early to mid-March for many reasons, but also because you're at this point, you're starting to realize things. So you're coming to a sense of that's over now. I can't be like this anymore. I don't want this anymore. I want to go in this direction. Venus rules your 10th house of social status, your reputation, your career, your vocation, who you are when you step outside. What I was saying earlier in the introduction applies, of course, to you directly. As I was saying, Capricorn is about taking responsibility and doing the thing, just doing what needs to be done. And now your question for yourself is, well, what do I need to be done to do? How do I change in such a way that I'm now engaging in this and no longer that, for example? So, pardon me. So, still working on this flu. So you have your ruler, Saturn, in the 3rd house still, just for another 5 weeks or so. It's going to leave on the 13th, 14th of February overnight. And um, and that's ruled by Jupiter in your house of relationship. Now that's in opposition to you. And it's all of these planets that are coming together right now are being opposed by this Jupiter. And so there's something here that you need to let go of. Is it a relationship? Is it a challenge to a business partnership? And this doesn't have to happen this week. Don't think of it that way, but think, okay, there might be a way of being or a dynamic around that that is with Jupiter exalted in your 7th house. It's in my best interest. Jupiter is ruling your ruler at this time. So Saturn is ruling from Jupiter's house, Pisces. And Jupiter also rules your 12th house of foreign lands. What is maybe your self-undoing? And maybe, again, that's part of this dynamic with Capricorn, with Pisces on the third house. And again, if you want to learn astrology, come and learn with me because you will understand all of these things. The third house ruled by Pisces, or rather ruled by Jupiter, signs don't rule. Jupiter is ruling your third house, and that is where you communicate from. And the clarity around communication is often something that Capricorn suffers with because you will often say things that are expedient. And that's a Capricorn trait, as I was trying to describe earlier, about just getting, it's like the Machiavellian sort of means to an end. So where Saturn, where your ruler is there now with Neptune, you're not going to so easily get away with that. You have to start to be honest, at the very least with yourself. You have to communicate in a way with people that is engaging and that connects and that allows you to feel like you're there. Because one of the things with Capricorn in third house, in terms of connecting with people, communications and so on, is that there's this kind of distance. You know, Pisces is like this ephemeral kind of wafty thing, and you're not always there. And the thing is that that makes you capable of doing the thing that you need to do, but it means that you're not, and again, when I say this, I'm not saying you specifically, the archetype of Capricorn, so notice where this shows up in your life somewhere. The Capricornian side that's strong in you, sun, moon, or ascendant, will at times obfuscate and not really be clear and not always speak from your heart. Speak the truth. Now, this is an opportunity for you to turn that around and really start these new relational dynamics. You've got a very strong Mars in your first house of self, so your ambition is really strong. Venus rules your 10th house of career and marriage, social status, and so on, as well as your fifth house of love. And so there's dynamics around those things that can be very personal and public as well. So how do I need to reconfigure those dynamics, those relationships, into like love relationships or child related relationships, or my work and business and social relationships, my social status, a renewal of that. And then, of course, Mars rules your fourth house of home and your lineage and the foundations of your life, but also your 11th house of your vision for your life, your vision for the future. And you've got now some need to adjust your vision. I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm saying you're feeling this new need because there's this new cycle that's coming in that is closing out the previous 2 years. Where the previous 2 years have done their thing, you're done. And now you're moving into another 2-year cycle. And we're looking at this new way for Capricorn to be. Who do I want to be? How do I want to show up? It's quite huge. Venus is still ruling Uranus while it's in your fifth house, and it's soon to move into your sixth house of work. And Mercury is in your first house, that is ruling that sixth house of work. So it's part of this bigger story as well. It's all happening. It's all there. And the South Node is in your ninth house, also ruled by Mercury. This is where Virgo is, and the Moon and South Node are asking you to shed some aspect of what you thought your life was all about, what your purpose was. There's something new happening here. Saturn, your ruler, has brought you a new sense of importance or a new sense of mission in terms of a practical dynamic. What do I want to do here? How do I want to do it? How do I need to engage? And that can be as simple and basic as I need a new neighborhood. I need to move. I need to be somewhere else. And that's very likely as well for many Capricorns, but also a sense of, who do I want to connect with? This is a social house, the third house. And the ninth house is also the house of fathers and father figures. So there can be something you're saying goodbye to in that respect as well. So again, I would need to see your own chart to know more about that, but just to keep that in mind. All right, Capricorn, it's a big, big, big time for you. And I would love you to let me know in the comments how it's all panning out for you. I'll see you in the next video. Aquarius, you are also having this really big dynamic shift in your life, but it's coming more from where it's hard to see and things that are a little bit more intimate to you spiritually or psychologically. Even it's the unconscious, it's the hidden, everything behind closed eyes or closed doors. That's the 12th house. And And so it might be secretive. There may be new beginnings that are actually hidden. They can't be spoken about. Mercury rules your house of marital intimacy or what you share with others. There may be something that you're letting go of. It could be quite literal. You may be having to deal with loss, quite a literal loss, a person that you loved that is dying or has passed, the loss of a marriage, the loss of a business contract, the loss of a way of being in terms of how you were even psychologically with reference to yourself, a recognition that you're now changing, your spiritual self is changing. All of this, of course, goes hand in hand with having Pluto in your first house, which has already for 2 years, plus almost 3 years now, been working, chipping away at your image of yourself and the way that you show up and forcing you to change, forcing you to be different, to find your power internally. Find your power from within rather than struggling in power struggles. You're going to have a lot of activity in the next couple of weeks. As soon as Aquarius season starts, you're going to have all of these planets piling up on Pluto in your first house. We'll talk about that in another video, but this is preparation behind the scenes, preparing yourself spiritually, perhaps even psychologically, emotionally, in terms of your health, your physical and mental health. We've got the South Node in the 8th, also ruled by this Mercury in the 12th. The moon also representing the mind and health in your 8th house. And it's ruling your 6th house of health, where we find Jupiter, your 6th house of every day. Am I working in a way that supports me? Am I realizing that I've taken on too much? That I haven't actually been clear around my boundaries? What is it that I need to change about my everyday activities, my everyday life, my work, and so on? There's a tension here. There's a tension between what you're realizing, what you're hearing, maybe from the beyond, from the spirit realms, or from your own dreams, receiving information and ideas, but also what you're contemplating in a way that you feel like you can't articulate quite yet. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily mystical. It might be, but it also can be really practical. It's like I'm contemplating these things, but I just don't know how to tell them about it. I don't know how to say this. And so this is the process. It's starting a new cycle. The 12th house is letting go, and you're ending something really quite significant here, that is beginning in very, very short time. By the time your birthday, by the time Aquarius season, or perhaps if you're Aquarius sun, it's your birthday time. By that time, you are starting everything over. It's a fresh start. So cultivate what you're ready to let go of. That might be surrender to the divine, in terms of a spiritual letting go of trying to control things. That's an Aquarian trait also. Needing to know, needing to control, letting go, let it all go. Venus rules your 9th house and your 4th house. 9th house is your purpose and your vision for your life. Why am I here? What is life all about? What's the higher meaning of all of this? 9th house is the father figure or teacher, guru. It's the road to God. It's how you see your faith. You could describe it as faith. And the 4th house is home and family, your lineage, property even, and your ruler Saturn is in the 2nd house. That's an investment house and it's money. So maybe you're also looking at aspects of moving, a decision around moving. Could be moving abroad, for example. 12th house is foreigners, foreign lands, faraway places. If it's about income and working with people in different ways, the sun represents your 7th house, which is relationships of all kinds, including clients and business partners and so on. Or a person, a lover, a loved one, a husband, a spouse, a wife. That might mean that you're moving for work, for example. It's better to move for work. But it's not like moving next door. This is moving like far away. But also it might be moving online. Saturn, Neptune going in your 3rd house. And Uranus going into your 5th house, trining you as well. Maybe there's an opportunity now where you realize I can't work, or I'm going to be fired, I'm going to be laid off, or whatever. I can't work like this anymore. And so I need to go online. I need to do my work, like international trade, foreign trade. That's the 12th house. I'm working in some kind of way like that. There are definitely new sources of income coming through with the North Node in your second, something focusing your attention on money anyway, and Jupiter in your sixth is ruling that second house, and that's your everyday work house. So something to do with how you're doing your job or how you're taking care of yourself that's impacting on your value, self-worth, and money. Jupiter also rules the 11th house of your great gains, the gains of the money that you make from what you do out in the world. That's not income so much as, especially if you're a business person, but it's also money that can come at you, things that come towards you that are supportive. And maybe there's something in terms of your everyday life where you're feeling more support coming through colleagues or employees, or health turns a corner, for example. You're realizing things about your health. You're realizing patterns of behavior. The 12th house is self-undoing. Jupiter in the 6th is showing you better ways to do it. And that's especially true while it's retrograding. You will then, from the 11th of March forward, find your way into this new pattern that you're devising now. Right. I think that pretty much covers it. We're going to talk a lot about you, Aquarius, in the next videos, because it's really the focus turns to you after Capricorn gets a bit of a break in the middle of the month. Okay, lots of love, and I'll see you in the next video. Right, Pisces. We have such a lot going on. I say we because I have a stellium in Pisces, including my sun, etc. And we have such a lot going on now in the 11th house from the sun, moon, or ascendant. And that's a new start in terms of your future. That's also house of gains. Venus is the exaltation ruler of Pisces, and that represents a potential for new income, new sources of income. She also rules the third house of contracts and teaching and working with people. Third house, 11th house connections are online connections as well. Just a little plug for you. I'm teaching online, both a beginner and an intermediate astrology course. Venus also rules your 8th house of astrology and the mystical stuff. And Mars rules your 9th house of counseling and reaching out to people, as well as your house of income. So these could be new starts, a new vision for your future that relates to learning astrology. Just saying. And then if that's not what your thing is all about, then this is definitely about you and your way of seeing yourself in a different way. Now with Saturn in the first house, having shown you different ways that you've been showing up that haven't really been good for you, that you needed to set new boundaries, that you needed to set limits in a particular domain, that you needed to somehow separate yourself from other people to find yourself. And this is the last kind of 5 weeks of that cycle. Neptune is leaving the first house, leaving Pisces on the 26th of January. Saturn follows very soon after on the 13th and 14th of February. So on the universal time, it's just after midnight on the 14th. And that's the end of this cycle of real personal change in terms of this longer picture. But we still then have the North Node in the first house, and that first house for Pisces is ruled by Jupiter in the 5th house, trinal, which represents creative expression, joy, happiness, how to express that, how to reach out into that. Jupiter is opposing all of this stuff that is showing up in the future, or the new ways of showing up in the future, and saying, if this doesn't match what it is that brings you joy and happiness, if you're doing stuff but you're sort of casting your pearls before swine kind of thing, or you're doing too much, it's not going to work for you. So you better get clear. What are your future plans? How do you see your future? Who's your team? Who's your audience? This is the South Node in the 7th house of the other, business partners or other clients and so on. And who is the audience in a broader sense? How do I invest in a new way, develop those relationships, cultivate those relationships with these people? We've got Mercury up in the 11th, ruling the 4th house, which is also your sense of foundation in your life. So this is also relaying to that, like, where do I live? How am I establishing myself? Venus is ruling the 3rd house of your day-to-day experience of life, your neighbors, your neighborhood, your extended family, and also up there in the house of the elder sibling. So there could be, for some of you, a massive new story in terms of your elder sibling, and that might bring you some kind of good fortune or a new cycle, at the very least, of a relationship with them that brings you to a whole different place. Certainly that's what Uranus will have been changing over the last very, very long time, since April, May of 2018. Mercury also rules your seventh house of relationship, South Node Moon, and that's part of this bigger dynamic of the person that I want to be with. Who should that be? How do I engage with them? More of your attention needs to go towards yourself, filling your own cup. How do I feel happy? What makes me happy? How do I reach into my creativity? And at the same time, see that there's something new that I need to commit to. So this is a planning week. This is a week of seeds being planted. It's not a week where things need to start. So focus on that. Jupiter rules your career. So part of the career story is not really going to show up as powerfully until Jupiter is direct again after the 11th of March. Venus and Mars are also going to be hidden. You'll hear that in either the annual reports that you can buy at the link below, or in the introduction where I'm talking about Venus and Mars being too close to the sun. They're not hidden, they're not seen. So what you're doing right now is only really going to show up by the eclipse that comes up in the 17th of February with Venus, and then the eclipse that comes through the early part of March, the 3rd of March, where Mars starts to become visible. So all of that to say, there's an enormous amount of newness in the life of Pisces that has a big picture quality to it, a long-term vision, a long-term future. Jupiter will move into the 6th house in the second half of the year. And again, you'll hear that in the annuals, but that will add a lot of focus on everyday work, perhaps also health issues as well. All right, Pisces, it's all change. We're going to talk a lot more about you as well in the next video, because we're going to have to talk about Saturn and Neptune leaving your sign. See you then, and good luck.